I've heard of the Canon cripple hammer where certain features in the lower-end cameras are limited, steering buyers towards the higher-end cameras.
Get out of here.
But I've recently discovered another weapon that all camera companies use. It's called the vlogging camera Snare. When content creators get tired of filming themselves on their phone, they start shopping for their first real camera. And unsuspecting noobs quickly find out that their new vlogging camera is severely limited. They should have went with a more expensive full-frame model. These days, every camera company offers their own version of a vlogging camera. They usually have APS-C sensors and a light, compact body with a flip-out screen. And most of them offer some convenient features for the beginner, such as Sony's ZV-E10's background defocus. If you're unsure how to open up your aperture, this camera is for you.
Now, the Sony ZV cameras have always had features to make it a little bit easier for people just starting out in photography to get a handle on more advanced controls. So, for example, background defocus has been a feature we've seen on other ZV cameras. Rather than understand how aperture works, you can simply use the background defocus to either have your subject in focus, everything else a soft blur, or everything in focus, for example.
Despite the fact that most vlogging cameras come with some beginner-friendly features, almost all of them are lacking one critical feature: in-body image stabilization, or IBIS. When I found out from Mark Bennett that the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II would have no IBIS, I felt a little devastated.
But there is no IBIS in this camera, no actual IBIS. It's all done through E-stabilization. So you are going to get a bit of a hefty crop when you're in that E-stabilization mode. Not as bad as the ZV-E10 original. That was a 44% crop. This one is a 33% crop.
And then I found out from Jared Pullen that the Nikon Z30 didn't have IBIS either.
There is also no IBIS in this camera, which is similar to Sony, which does not have IBIS in the ZV-E10. But as you see from being outside with the 16-50 with VR, you can see that the stability actually looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it's herky-jerky or bouncing around too much, so that VR did do a pretty good job.
And then Casey from Camera Conspiracies said that the Canon R50V didn't have any IBIS either.
What I don't get is how we can even forgive a vlogging camera being released with no IBIS.
Even Panasonic, a company known for its industry-leading stabilization, didn't put any IBIS in their dedicated vlogging camera, the Lumix G100. I could just feel the disappointment in Emily from Micro Four Nerds review.
The glaring omission is it doesn't have in-body stabilization, also known as IBIS. So when you're walking around living your best #vlog life, the footage is really, really shaky. The only stabilization that this camera has is digital stabilization, which adds a crop. But that is not the whole hideous story. The 4K footage alone on this camera has a 1.22 times crop. So it makes your 12mm vlogging lens closer to a 15mm lens or a 30mm lens in full frame terms. So really, really cropped in and quite claustrophobic. If you add your digital stabilization on top of that, things get really, really silly. So we have a 4K crop. We have a digital stabilization crop. And then you think, well, maybe I'll use a wide-angle lens to counteract that. But then you use a wide-angle lens, none of them are stabilized, and then you need to use the digital crop even more, and then you are back where you started.
I agree with Casey from Camera Conspiracies. Stable footage is just about the most important thing in vlogging.
Like, it keeps happening over and over. I don't understand. It was the Nikon Z30 and Sony ZV-E10, and it keeps happening to us. I don't get it. Like, the most important thing in your video is how stable it is.
I would hate to think that camera companies are intentionally leaving off IBIS in order to frustrate vloggers into buying a more expensive camera. I have noticed that many camera reviews on YouTube compare the vlogging camera to a more expensive full-frame model, and the camera companies don't seem to mind that at all.
One thing you'll be able to notice if you look super closely, and I'll clip back and forth between the two cameras because you've certainly already forgotten by now, is that because the ZV-E10 uses an APS-C sensor, a literally smaller imaging sensor, a crop body they call it, at the same 1.8 aperture, you will indeed get a little bit less bokeh in the background. The stuff behind me will be oh so slightly less out of focus. ZV-E10, A7S3. ZV-E10, A7S3. ZV-E10, A7S3.
Before we jump to the specs, I do want to let you know that we are recording with the Z30 right now with a 35 1.8 to try and match the Canon R5 with a 51.2. Now, let me repeat this, or just say it for the first time. This is not a comparison. We're not trying to say that this less expensive camera matches this camera or make it a comparison. We just want to show you the difference between the two, because maybe they're really close and you can't really tell the difference. You might be able to see some depth of field differences because it's a 35 1.8 versus a 50 1.2, but we got it set as close as possible.
I have noticed that even though vlogging cameras are aimed at content creators making videos, they do offer the ability to take photos. And even though they come with a sensor equipped to take beautiful photographs, excepting the Lumix G100, none of them come with an electronic viewfinder. And I have noticed that in many of these YouTube camera reviews, they do point out this lack of an EVF as being a possible issue.
What it does not have is an EVF. Now, for me personally, if I was a stills shooter, this would not be the way that I go. Now, I know Nikon would be upset to be like, oh, don't tell people not to use it as a stills camera. But look, if you're looking to grow as a photographer, I'm big into saying you kind of must have an EVF so that you can be more stable, you look through the camera, and you're not holding it out in front of you, which looks extremely amateurish on a job. I'll be honest with you, a lot of being a photographer is how you look.
I wonder if by offering these basic photography features, some of these camera companies aren't trying to lure the content creator into upgrading to a more expensive photography camera. As you know, once you start doing photography on a mirrorless camera, gas can set in really quickly. I've noticed that many of the reviews for vlogging cameras on YouTube put an emphasis on the words beginner, and they often joke about these being used for TikTok.
Vertical video on the ZV-E10. The TikTok, the booty popping, man, oh man, you want to pop the booty, this is the way to go. Because
Yeah, let's try some TikTok dances real quick.
My money don't jiggle, jiggle, it folds. My money don't jiggle, jiggle, it folds.
While there's absolutely no shame in being a beginner or a TikToker, I would have to say that many people are looking to buy a camera so they could start out in a filmmaking career. I'm starting to think that camera companies like it when reviewers emphasize that these cameras are for beginners or TikTokers. That way it might motivate people with aspirations towards filmmaking into buying a more expensive camera.
The filmmaker's eye. Oh, look at the highlight roll-off of the Dignity shadows. Did you add a little green hue in those mixes?
Vlogging cameras are marketed as compact and lightweight, equipped with a flip-out screen perfect for filming yourself. But I'm starting to think that they're a gateway drug into the more expensive world of mirrorless cameras. The Sony ZV-E10 is like the harmless marijuana that pulls you in. Before you know it, you're hooked on the heroin that's the FX3. Once gear acquisition syndrome gets you in its grasp, it's almost impossible to break free. There may not be any hope for me, but I wanted you to be aware of these things before buying your first vlogging camera. If you like this video, give it a like, consider subscribing for more camera-related content from a newbie like me. God bless.